So let me tell you about this topology, right? I mean, I have taken a simple topology, right, from the Google. So as you can see that there is two firewall, right? So let's suppose firewall 1, right, and firewall 2, right? Or you can see that primary firewall or this is the secondary firewall, right? So from this way, I'm going to configure the HA configuration. So before configuration, I will show you what are the prerequisites for HA configuration, right? So before moving ahead, I will recommend you that FortiGate HA configuration prerequisites, right? So for it, FortiGate's model and firmware must be same, right? And make sure your FortiGate interfaces are configured with static IP address, not any DSIP or PoE IP address, right? And LAN or WAN interfaces should be, or you can say must be connected via layer 2 or layer 3 switches, right? And all the FortiGate in a cluster must have the same level configuration, right? This is the prerequisites for HA configuration, right? So I will show you one more thing that if I don't have a HA configuration, then what will happen in our scenario, in our network, or you can say in our office, right? So as you can see that, so first of all, I will tell you one more thing, or one more thing that FortiGate has let me FortiGate has have three modes, right, of HA. Three modes of HA. First one is standalone mode, right? Number second is active passive mode. And the third one is active, right? So by default, FortiGate has a standalone mode, right? So for now, I am going to configure active passive mode, right? So I will show you one more thing that, and I want to tell you one more thing that if I have a standalone switch, then what will happen, right? Let's suppose if we have a single FortiGate firewall, right, in our offices, then all the users are going via this FortiGate to reach the internet, right? If this user, or you can say these are the user wants to go to the internet, then at this time traffic will find, right? Suppose what will happen if this FortiGate will down. So in this scenario, we have to configure active passive mode or active, that is called HA high availability configuration, right? So by default, FortiGate has a standalone mode. So today I'm going to configure FortiGate active passive mode. So let me show you a diagram what I have designed for this lab practice, right? So this is the basic lab, right, that I am going to configure. So as you can see that this is the basic lab. So let me show you what I have configured till now. I have just, let me from the, I'm going to start the from below, I mean switch, right? So as you can see that here I have configured only VLAN, right, and trunking, right. This is the trunk port, right, and this is the also trunk port, and this is the access port, and this is the also access port. This server, I mean application server, is in VLAN 10, and IT admin is in VLAN 20, right? So till now I didn't configure anything on the FortiGate firewall. So let me have the console of FortiGate firewall, right? So as you can see that I didn't configure anything, right? So first I'm going to configure management interface, right? So by default username is admin, password is blank. Now I'm going to set password 123, but you can set as your requirement, right? So password has been set, right? So first of all, I'm going to configure system, configure system global. I'm going to configure host name, right? This is the primary firewall. So I'm going to have the primary name the primary firewall, right? F set host name, FGT 48 primary, right? So you can see that host name has been set, right? Now I'm going to configure the management interface. From there, I will access the FortiGate firewall, right? System config system interface edit. Port 10 is going to be management interface, right? Set mode static, right? Set IP 192.168.79.2, right? /24. In my case, this is the management IP address, right? In your case, it could be anything, right? You can choose as your per requirement, right? And I'm going to have the set allow access ping HTTPS telnet SSH, right? Then next, and so let me show you that this configuration has been configured or not. System interfaces. So as you can see that only management interface IP address has been configured, right? There is nothing configured in this FortiGate firewall. So let's check whether I'm able to ping or not. 192.79.1. Yes, I'm able to access this IP address. From this IP address, I will access, this is my physical machine IP address, right? I mean computer's IP address, right? So now I'm going to take the console of FortiGate firewall. One 192.168.79.2. This is the management interface IP address, right? So username going to be admin, password 123, right? This is the very basic password. But I will recommend you, please choose the strong password, right? So let me show you. I haven't configured anything on this FortiGate firewall, right? So as you can see that except management interface IP address, I didn't configure anything, right? So now I am going to configure the port 1 and port 2 IP address, right? So let me show you what I have kept the IP address on the one interface, right? So as you can see that this is the my Airtel IP address, right? And this is the IP address which will become the gateway of this port, I mean port 1, right? This is this 192.168.99.2/28. This is the IP address will be port 1, right? And for TCL link, IP address will be 192.168.98.2, right? This IP address will be port of 2, and that's it, right? So So now I'm going to configure 192.168.99.2 for port 1, and for port 2, 192.168.92.98.2 for port 2. This is the TCL link, right? So let's configure. When one port is going to be Airtel, right? Port 1, alias, right? And IP address going to be manual 192.168.99.2. This is the IP address of port 1, which is facing the one interface, port 1, right? I am going to have only key, only ping, right? I am going to allow only the ping access, right? Then okay. For port 2, I'm going to configure the IP address 192.168.98.2 for TCL, right? Port 2, port is going to be 1, right? 192.168.98.2/24. Ping, I'm going to allow only ping access. Okay. As you can see that IP address has been configured. So for port 4 will be the LAN interface IP address, and port 3 will be the heartbeat interface IP address. So now I'm going to configure for port 4, which is the LAN interface, right? So there is a two VLAN 10 and VLAN 20. VLAN 10 is the application server and VLAN 20 is the IT admin. So now I'm going to configure the inter VLAN routing for this port, right? So for it, you have to go to in the interfaces, then configure port interface name, port 4, right? VLAN 10, which is the application. I'm going to have only the VLAN 10, right? Alias, I'm going to port 4, right? VLAN 10, then application, right? Port is going to be 4 and VLAN is going to be have 10, right? IP address I'm going to 10.1.1.1/24. 10.1.1.1 will be the gateway of VLAN 10, right? Whatever user will be in the LAN. So I'm going to allow HTTPS, ping, SNMP, SSH, right? You can allow as your requirement, right? So that's it. Then okay. Now I'm going to configure for VLAN 20 interface, right? For port 4 VLAN 20, then port 4 VLAN 20, then it is going to be admin, right? Port 4 then VLAN 20 IP address is going to be 10.1.2.1/24, right? This IP address will become the gateway of VLAN 20, whatever user will be in the LAN, right? I'm going to allow administrative access HTTPS, PIN, SSH, and SNMP, right? You can choose as per your requirement, right? Then I'm going to allow OK. As you can see that enter VLAN routing has been configured for both VLAN, right? Just expand this option. As you can see that IP address configured for port, there is no IP address configured, right? This is the enter VLAN routing, right? You can say also. So now I am going to configure SD-WAN, right? This is the more interesting topic. Let me show you what will happen if SD-WAN will not allow. You have to configure separately traffic. If you have configured the SD-WAN interfaces, yeah, then you don't have to configure the static route one by one, right? So let's get started. Let's configure the SD-WAN, right? So now I'm going to configure SD-WAN. Go to the GUI of FortiGate firewall. So for SD-WAN, you have to go to in the network option, right? There is a SD-WAN. So I'm going to enable first of all, then create SD-WAN interfaces. So let me show you SD-WAN interface member. I'm going to configure port 1 and port 2, and that interface will become the SD-WAN interface, right? So I'm going to configure port 1, right? So port 1, where is the port 1? This is the port 1, right? And the gateway I'm going to have 192.168.99.1, right? So then okay. So one more one more link I'm going to allow one interface. So gateway 192.98.1, right? So this is the TCL WAN interface IP address, right? I mean gateway, right? Then okay. So as you can see that interface has been configured, right? Then I am going to apply this configuration. So as you can see that the interfaces is so far down, right? So now I'm going to create SD-WAN rule, right? So create, go to SD-WAN, right? SD-WAN rule, right? For Airtel and TCL. So source I'm going to have all, right? But you can choose your requirement. I'm going to leave this option, and destination I'm going to also keep all, right? I'm going to configure strategy is going to be outgoing interface strategy will be best quality, and interface I'm going to preference major SLA. Let me Google search, then okay, there is nothing interface. Oh, first of all, I am going to configure so why I am not able to configure this SD-WAN interface. First, I am going to enable, right? So I am going to configure port 1, right? Airtel, and gateway I am going to configure 192.168.99.1, then enable, then okay. So I am going to configure for TCL 192.168.98.1, and this IP address will become the gateway, right? Then okay, then apply. So now I am going to configure SD-WAN rules. So create SD-WAN rule. So I'm going to have the rule name SD-WAN rule Airtel for and TCL. So because I have two links, Airtel and TCL, which is the WAN links, I mean internet links, right? I'm going to have all, and this option I'm going to leave, and I'm going to have the also destination IP address will become the all, and outgoing interface, best quality interface, and interface will member will be port 1 and port 2, because this is the one interface, right, which I have configured in SD-WAN, right? And these interface as a part of SD-WAN, right? So I'm going to measure SLA Google, right? Default Google, and quality criteria I'm going to have packet loss, and then enable and OK. That's it, right? So if you don't know how to configure SD-WAN and what is the why we required SD-WAN, so you can watch the video in the previous video, right? You can also watch my previous video which I have shown and configure the SD-WAN rules and all the steps, right? Then go to performance SLA. I'm going to have the performance SLA packet loss, right? So create new. So I am going to have the performance SLA for Airtel and TCL, because I have two links, Airtel and TCL, right? And things server I'm going to have 8.8.8. This is the Google DNS IP address, and I'm going to have secondary IP address 8.8.4.4, right? So I'm going to leave anything. So as you can see that, let me edit one more thing. I have to mention participants, right? Airtel port 1 and port 2, right? And then OK. So as you can see that packet loss for port 1, port 2, packet loss has been configured, right? So now I am going to configure a static route, right? So I am going to configure a static route for interface. There is a SD-WAN interface, right? In this SD-WAN interface, both gateway has been configured, right? For Airtel and TCL. You don't have to configure anything else. You just select the SD-WAN interface, then OK, right? So now I am going to configure the policy, right? So for policy configuration, you have to go to the policy and object IPv4 policy. So as you can see that there is no any policy has been configured so far. Only accept the implicitly deny policy, which is the default policy in every firewall, right? So now I'm going to configure the policy for Airtel, right? For VLAN 10, right? Which belongs to the application server, right? So I'm going to have the application server, right? VLAN 20, VLAN 10. Sorry, incoming interface will be the inter-VLAN routing interface, which is the port 1, right? Which is the port 4, right? As you can see that port 4, right, for VLAN 10, and outgoing interface will become SD-WAN interface, and the source will become, I'm going to have the source interface all, right? Source address will have the all, and destination IP and destination address I am going to have all, and services I'm going to have all also. Then all session for log traffic. So now I'm going to configure one more policy for VLAN 20, which is the IT admin belongs to that VLAN. So for IT, right, VLAN 20 incoming interface, I'm going to have port 4, which is belong to the inter-VLAN routing VLAN 20, and outgoing interface SD1 interface, right, and source I'm going to have also all, destination also all. But you can configure as per your organization requirement, right? I will suggest to you. So two policy has been configured, right? So as you can see that two policy has been configured, right? So let's check whether I'm able to ping 8.8.8 from VLAN 10 and VLAN 20 or not. So now I am going to start this browser, right? Firefox. And I'm going to also start this application server. From there I will check that I'm able to ping 8.8.8 or not, right? So right now I'm not able to configure I'm not able to ping the Google DNS, right? Because I didn't have any configured on this ISP router, the TC and the translation, right? I mean, any ACL configure or any net, I didn't configure on this ISP router. So first of all, I have to configure the access list, I mean, interesting traffic, and netting we have to enable, right? So first of all, I'm going to configure one access list. So first of all, let me show you that I'm not able to ping. So first I have to show you, right? So console, if I ping 8.8.8.8, I'm not able to ping because this it is showing the destination host reachable. Let me trace route the 8.8.8.8. As you can see that traffic is denied, right? So now I am going to configure the one interesting traffic, and netting I have to also enable, right? Permit anything, right? IP net inside source list 10 and interface Gig Ethernet 3x0 overload, right? So let me check whether, so running configuration. So let me check whether I have done. So as you can see that IP net inside and outside already is allowed. So let me show you that this interface will become the outside interface, and this interface will become the inside interface, right? So let's check whether I am able to ping or not. Ping 8.8.8. I hope it will be successful, right? So as you can see that I am able to ping, right? So let me repeat ping 8.8.8.8, repeat 10,000, right? So let me have the console of this browser. So let me check IP address is configured or not. For IP address configure, you have to go to network setting. So as you can see that IP address hasn't configured, right? So I'm going to configure IP address 2.2.2, right? So because it's the VLAN 20, so IP address gateway will be 10.1.10.1.2.1, right? So I'm going to add the DNS name 8.8.DNS IP address 8.8.8. That's it, right? So let me check whether IP address is configured or not. If config, as you can see that IP address has been configured. So let me check the Google DNS IP address. So as you can see that I'm able to reach this DNS server. So let me check the browser also from the browser whether I'm able to access any website or not. So it will be verified. So let me type the facebook.com, Facebook. As you can see that I'm able to access the facebook.com. Let me check the YouTube. You can check, as you can see that all the site I'm able to access. So let me LinkedIn. As you can see that I'm able to access. Let me take the news Aaj Tak, right? So as you can see that this site I'm also able to access, right? So that's has been verified, right? So now I am able to access all the sites, and I am also able to ping the 8.8.8, right? So now let's move toward the FortiGate high availability configuration, right? So for high availability configuration, we don't have to configure all the configuration for the secondary firewall, except only the HA configuration, right? Only this configuration I have to configure, right? I mean, only this configuration I have to configure this one, right? So I am going to configure this configuration on primary firewall, and for only I have to change the priority, right? 150 on the secondary firewall. So let me first start the secondary firewall, right? So it will take time because I don't have too much RAM, and my laptop configuration has not enough, right? Let me start this firewall also. And for HA port, I have only a single interface, right? Port 3. But in your case, it could be 2 links, or you can be 4 links as per your requirement, right? So it will take time. Just wait for a few minutes, right? Because it's take time. Let me tell you one more thing. If I don't have a 2 firewall, right? I don't have 2 firewall. So if this firewall, suppose if this firewall I doesn't have, right? So what will have in that case? All the traffic will come and simply will be dropped, right? That's why I have taken 2 firewall. And in this scenario, FortiGate firewall HA works, right? For better performance, right? So any impact will, so there will be any impact for this LAN users, right? So let me check whether secondary firewall has been started or not. As you can see that secondary firewall has been started. So let me change the first host name, right? So config system global set host name FGT secondary, right? So as you can see that host name has been set, right? So now I am going to configure the HA configuration on FortiGate firewall, right? Primary firewall, right? So let me show you. Till now I didn't configure any HA configuration, right? So admin 123. So for HA configuration, if you want to check the HA configuration, then you have to go to the system. Then there is an option HA, right? So as you can see that this firewall is standalone mode in standalone mode, right? So now I am going to configure the HA configuration in FortiGate firewall, primary firewall. I mean, from the CLI, right? So let me copy this configuration, right? So let me tell you what is the meaning of this configuration. So if you want to configure HA configuration, then you have to go to config system HA, then you have to set the group ID, right? And set the group name HA cluster and set mode, what mode you want to configure, right? So and you have to also the set password admin, right? So these are the configuration and set heartbeat interface, right? This is the port 3, right? And session pickup I have also going to enable and set override enable. These configuration will work as a VRP, right? VRP, or you can say that HSRP, right? So I will tell you in more detail in next video, right? So first, today I am going to just show you how to configure the HA in FortiGate firewall, right? So now I am going to configure HA configuration in primary firewall, right? So just you have to only enter this configuration. If you want to check the configuration, so you have to type the get system HA, right? Get system HA status. So as you can see that here it is primary firewall saying that is selected as a master because it's the only member. At this time only it is stand-alone mode, right? Now I am going to configure for a secondary firewall, right? For it, you have to only change the priority, right? So I am going to have the priority 150. Right, because this is this secondary firewall will become the secondary firewall. I'm in the cluster, right? So just I'm going to paste this configuration on secondary firewall. So as you can see that I have the configured the all the configuration whatever I have configured on the primary firewall except a priority, right? So just wait a minute because it will take time because all the configuration is syncing from primary firewall. So let me check the get system HA status, right? You have to wait for a minute because it will take time. I mean, configuration is syncing, right? So let me check the GUI also from the GUI. So go to system, As you can see that I have to configure the HA cluster, HA configuration, right? Just wait a minute because it will take time, right? So till now, this secondary firewall didn't come up, right? So wait a minute. Let me log out this firewall and log in again. So admin. As you can see that I am getting the message slaves configuration is not in sync with master, right? Because wait a minute, because it will take some time. I am configuring in GNS 3. If it is real device, then it will sync within 5 or 10 minutes, right? So I want to tell you one more thing. If you have to check the HA configuration, HA status, so whether both FortiGate firewall is in sync or not, then you have to put this command get system HA status, right? HA status, right? I think configuration has been synced, right? Let me check config system HA, sorry, config and config system and so see all the configuration has been synced in secondary firewall. So I have only configure HA configuration and host name accept, right? All the configuration has been synced, right? If you want to check the policy also, config firewall policy, right? So as you can see that the policy, all the configuration has been synced, right? Whatever configuration in primary firewall. So in this scenario, nothing will happen, right? If your primary firewall goes down, there will not be any change, right? So let me show you the GUI configuration also. Just log out. As you can see that here it is showing that HA not synced. If you log out, then I hope this message will be disappear, right? Umesh, sorry, username will be admin and password 123, right? So let me check. So as you can see that, right, configuration has been synced and it is showing that this firewall, I mean primary firewall, where I have configured priority 20 has been become primary firewall, and less priority will become the secondary firewall. So let's verify that whether LAN user is, if primary firewall will go down, then nothing will happen for LAN user, right? So let me show you. Now I am going to down the, let me one thing. As you can see that right now I am still able to ping Google DNS, right? So now I am going to down the primary firewall, right? So first of all, I will also show you that right now where traffic, from where traffic is going. It is going via Airtel or TCL. Let me check that. So as you can see that I am going to check from the application server, right? So trace to 8.8.8.8, right? As you can see that traffic is moving via Airtel link, right? So now I am going to ping, repeat ping, right? 8.8.8.8, repeat 10,000 packet, right? I am giving 1 lakh per packet, right? So now I am going to down the primary firewall, right? So as you can see here, you can also check that traffic is going through the primary firewall, right? So now I am going to down the primary firewall, right? So I am going to just stop this firewall. But in your case, if you have a real firewall, you just reboot the configuration, right? Just reboot the firewall, not you have to from the push or push the button. You don't have to do these things. You just execute. Let me show you. Here I am going to execute shut down, right? I am going to shut down the primary firewall, right? So as you can see that as soon as I enter the enter this command, nothing will happen because I have the because I have the HA cluster. I mean I have the primary firewall and secondary firewall. If primary firewall goes down, nothing will happen for the LAN users. So now I am going to test this command. So as you can see the firewall giving the message. So let me check that traffic is down or not. As you can see that the traffic is still moving, right? Nothing will change. So here you can also check that nothing is happening. All the packet is moving smoothly, right? Via secondary firewall. So let me show you that firewall is down. So as you can see that firewall is down, but still traffic is moving through the TCL link, right? I mean not TCL link. There is being load balancing, right, on this firewall because I have to configure the SD-WAN load balancing also. So as you can see that the traffic is moving via the secondary firewall, right? So let me show the GUI also. Where is the firewall? Admin 1, 2, 3. As you can see that secondary firewall is up, right? It is master because primary firewall is down. As you can see that it is also showing the synchronized. All the configuration has been synchronized. As you can see that on secondary firewall priority was 150, right? On that time it was secondary firewall, right? It was the slave firewall. but at this time it is the master, right? Here, as you can see that this is showing the master. Once primary firewall will come up, then this firewall become the secondary firewall. Secondary, I mean slave firewall, because it has a less priority, right? So let me show you the policy also. As you can see that traffic is moving via the both links, right? See, that's how we have to configure HA in FortiGate firewall, right? If you want to check the HA configuration, then you will have to go to the FortiGate firewall, the CLI. Then you have to run the get system HA status, right? So as you can see that master selected using this one, these are the configuration add, right? So as you can see that master for take secondary firewall is the master, right? So if you want to check get system HA, so as you can see that group ID is 10, group name is HA cluster, mode what I was discussing, because I have configured active passive, that's why it is showing the active passive, right? If this is a single firewall, then here will it will show that it's standalone. If you have configured passive active, then it will show the active mode, right? So right, password I have also configured. Heartbeat interface is port 3, right? These are the configuration. As you can see that what I have configured. So let me check that secondary primary firewall has come up or not. So as you can see that it is still down. So now I am going to push this firewall to come up, right? So once this firewall will come up, then this firewall become the primary firewall, and this firewall become the secondary firewall, right? So as you can see that till now packet is not dropping, right? It is moving and traffic is moving this smoothly, and user will not be impacted, right? If this method you applied in your organization. So as you can see that here it is also saying if I have to check that if you want to check that any web services, so you can also check that. Let me open the America, right? So as you can see that I'm able to access this site. You can access whatever you want to access, right? Let me check that primary firewall come up, not. As you can see that it has been come up, primary firewall, right? So get system HA status. So as you can see that at this time it is the primary firewall, right? Get system HA, right? See, right? So let me show you the GUI configuration also. So for checking, you have to go to the HA configuration system. So as you can see that it is till now in sync mode, right? Synchronized. All the configuration has been synchronized, both the firewall. So just wait a minute. So let me log out once. 192.168. As you can see that firewall has been come up, right? So I'm going to have username admin password 123. So let's check that firewall has been synced between the both firewall or not, right? So let me check the check configuration. So as you can see that configuration has been synced, right? So as you can see that it is also showing that synchronized. Earlier it was not showing, right? So that's how, if you want to configure HA configuration in FortiGate firewall, so that's idea will be better for your organization, right? So that's how we have to configure HA configuration in FortiGate firewall, right? So this is the method if you want to configure HA configuration. So next video I will be configuring active mode, right? So let me describe one more thing. So that's you can see that here I have configured a simple things like VLANs and trunking, and here I have configured inter-VLAN routing for both VLAN, right, on primary firewall, right? And next I have configured the SD-WAN configuration, right, on primary firewall. Then I have configured the policies, and next I have configured the interesting traffic. I mean, whatever traffic will come through this firewall. So this ISP router will translate these IP address private into public and public into private. So if you don't configure this one, if you don't configure the interesting traffic, I mean, if you don't enable NAT, then all the traffic will come through the firewall and simply will be dropped on the ISP router. So that's why I have configured the netting and ACL. So for secondary firewall, I have configured the host name and HA configuration, right? I didn't configure the SD-WAN configuration and inter-VLAN routing and policies, rest of the things, right? So as soon as I have down this FortiGate firewall, then all the configuration has been synced via the HA configuration in the secondary firewall, right? So as you can see that I have configured the config system. If you want to configure the HA configuration, then you have to go to config HA system, then set group ID, and these are the configuration must match on the secondary firewall except priority, right? Because if priority will be same, then the election will be the serial number, right? So one more thing I want to show you that as for priority, let me tell you one more thing. I have configured priority 200 for primary firewall. I am in FortiGate 1, and for secondary firewall I have configured priority 150, right? Let me show you one more thing that here I have to mark something, right? So as you can see that virtual cluster, right? 192.169.254.0.1 is the virtual cluster IP address, right? Which will work on the between the HA between the heartbeat interface, right? So thank you for watching this video. If you like this video, then it will be more beneficial for me, and I will recommend you. If you are fresher, then you must watch this video. Thank you for watching this video till the end.